with respect to Russia, did the US in the 1990s make a mistake similar to the one the victorious powers made in Versailles after World War I? Maybe we shouldn't have expanded NATO, maybe even disbanded it. Your thoughts?
I don't know about disbanding NATO because the time immediately following the dissolution of the Soviet Union was such a volatile time in world history that I feel like absolutely eliminating the organization might have been somewhat of an overreaction. But it is clear that since the early 1990s, NATO has been an alliance to a large degree in search of a mission. And while it has involved itself in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere, ironically, it really isn't until this current flare up that NATO's original role has become extremely vital on the world stage. Did the US and its allies make a mistake by expanding NATO so aggressively toward Russia and allowing so many of the former Soviet client states to join? Well, that's a matter of debate. On one hand, there's no question that Putin and his allies and his advisors in Russia believe very strongly that that was an abject humiliation to the Russian people, not just that the Soviet Union had collapsed, but that so many of its members were joining the West. And a lot of smart thinkers warned the Clinton administration in the 1990s that perhaps NATO should be somewhat more careful and cautious and circumspect in expansion so as to avoid inflaming the Russians. It's been reported, and there's no reliable source on this, it's been reported that James Baker, George H.W. Bush's Secretary of State, promised the Russians that NATO would not expand into the former Soviet Union. Baker says he doesn't say that. Putin says he did. We'll never know. And so there is something to be said because it's clear that that humiliation fuels a lot of Putin's anger and motivation for a lot of his actions on the world stage. But that said, to be fair, in every single Eastern Bloc state that joined NATO, the people of those countries were overwhelmingly in favor of it. So the question, just as hard to resolve now 30 years later, is do you honor the wishes of those people by moving more aggressively, or do you proceed with a bit more caution in order to avoid the kind of situation in which we now find ourselves? My own feeling is that if it wasn't for NATO expansion, Putin would be looking for another reason to try to reassert himself on the world stage. But it is clear that because NATO expanded so quickly and so aggressively, that has given him a rationale for doing so.